Welcome. We begin Be'ez Hashem on Daf Gimel Amud Aleph. The Gemara quotes Rabbi Eliezer's opinion that the latest time that you can say Kriya Shema is until the end of the first Ashmara. Says the Gemara, "My kesava Rabbi Eliezer." What does Rabbi Eliezer hold? I kesava shalosh mashmaros have halaylo le'ma'ad arba shos. If he holds that the night is broken up to three different parts, so what does he say? That you can say Kriya Shema until the fourth hour. V'i kesava arba mishmaros have halaylo le'ma'ad shalosh shos. And if he holds that the night is broken up to four different parts, then let him say that you can say Kriya Shema until the third hour. In other words, why doesn't Rabbi Eliezer in the Gemara, in the Mishnah rather, say that you can say Kriya Shema until the third or the fourth hour? What is this until the end of the first Ashmara? La'olam kesavar shalosh mishmaros. The Gemara says, really, Rabbi Eliezer holds three mishmaros. There are three different parts of the night. Have halayla. V'hava kamash malon. The ika mishmaros barakia, the ika mishmaros ba'ara. And it comes to teach us that there are mishmaros here, ba'ara, in the land, that are indicative of that which are going on in the rakia. The Tanya, for it says in the Brayso the following: Rabbi Eliezer oimer shalosh mishmaros havei halayla, ve'al kol mishmar u'mishmar yoshev HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'shoyeg ki'ari. There are three mishmaros in the night, and in each mishmar HaKadosh Baruch Hu kaviyachol is sitting and roaring like a lion. Shenemar, as it says, Hashem mimoram yishag, umimoram kodsho yiten koloi, she'oig yishag al nevehu. Here it states in the pasuk the word shoag three different times, indicating there are three different parts of the night. And what is HaKadosh Baruch Hu roaring about? Al nevehu, on his abode, which refers to, of course, the Beis Hamikdash. V'siman ledavar, and the siman that is here down in the Ara is Mishmar Rishona Chamor Noya. The first Mishmar, there's a siman that the Chamor, the donkey, brays. Shnia Kilovim Tsayakim. The second Mishmar has a siman that the dogs are barking or screaming. Shlishis Tinoik Yonek Mishdei Imoy, the Isha Misaperes Imbaila. The third Mishmar siman is that it's the end of the night, whereby the Tinok is beginning to get hungry and begins crying for its mother. Alternatively, a husband and wife begin speaking as they are getting up in the morning. Michael Choshiv Rabbi Eliezer. How does Rabbi Eliezer count these simonim? At which point, it chilas mishmarois kachoshiv. Chilas mishmar rishona simona lamali ortehu. If he's counting them in the beginning of the mishmar, well, the first mishmar, to count from the beginning, you don't need a siman because that's already the beginning of the night. Isoif mishmaros kachoshiv. If he's coming to count from the end, soif mishmar achroina lamali simona yemamahu. Why does he need a siman for the end? For the end of the third Ashmar, which is already the beginning of the day. That is already clear that it's the beginning of the day. You don't need a siman. Ella, says the Gemara, Choshiv soif mishmar rishoina utchilas mishmar achroina. Rather, you have to say, says the Gemara, to explain that he says the siman is in the end of the first Ashmara and the beginning of the last Ashmara. The Emtzi and the second siman is in the middle of the middle Ashmara. The Ibois Eima, or alternatively, you can explain Rabbi Eliezer as follows: Kulu soif mishmaros kachoshiv. Really, he counts at the end of every mishmar. V'chiteima achroina lo tzorich, and that which you asked at the end of the third Ashmara is not necessary. L'may nafka mina. What does it come out? What is it going to then reveal to us? Lemikri kriya shema. Leman degoni bebeis ofil v'lo yoda zman kriya shema emas. It tells a person who is going to be sleeping in a dark room, and he's lying down, he doesn't know what time to say kriya shema shel shacharis. Kivan the isha mesaperes im bailo, since a woman and her husband begin speaking, v'tinok yonek mishtei imo, or a tinok begins crying for its mother to be fed, leikum velikri, he'll get up and he'll then say Kriya Shema shel shacharis. Omer Rav Yitzchok bar Shmuel mishmei derav, Gimel mishmoros have halayla. He brings the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, like we just saw. There are three different parts to the night. Ve'al kol mishmar u'mishmar yoshev HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'shoyeg ke'ari. On every mishmar, HaKadosh Baruch Hu kaviyachol sits and roars like a lion. Ve'oimer, and he says, Oy lebonim sheba'avonoseihem hechravti es beisi. Woe is to my children, that because of their avonos, I was mesalik my shechina from the Beis HaMikdash. V'sarafti es heicholi, and I destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, letting it become aflamed. V'higleisi lebein umois ha'olam, and I exiled them amongst the nations of the world. Now the Gemara brings a brayso. Tanya, Omer Rabbi Yosi, Pam achas hayisi mahalech baderech. Says Rabbi Yosi, one time I was traveling on the road, v'nichnasti lechurva, and I entered an old ruin. Achas mechurvas Yushalayim, one of these ruins from Yushalayim. Lihispalo today in order to daven. Bo Eliyahu zochu latoiv v'shomer li al haPesach. Eliyahu Hanavi waited for me at the doorway. Asher siyamti tfilosi, until I was done davening. La'achar shesiyamti tfilosi, once I was finished davening, Omar li, he said to me, Shalom Aleichem Rebbe. V'amarti loi, Shalom Aleichem Rebbe umari. V'omar li, he said to me, B'ni, mipnei ma nichnasta lechurva zu? Why did you enter this ruin? Amarti loi, lihispalel, in order to daven. V'omar li, hayalachol lihispalel baderech, you should have davened on the road. V'amarti loi, misyori hayisi, shema yasiku bi ovrei drochim. I was afraid that maybe somebody would then cause me to have a hefsek and interrupt my tefillah. V'omar li, and he said to me, hayalachol lihispalel tefillah kitzara. Then you should have davened a tefillah kitzara. And tefillah kitzara here is referring to what's called havinenu. And one of the explanations is that havinenu is a composite tefillah. There are three brachos of the Shmoneh Esrei in the beginning that remain the same. The three brachos at the end also remain the same, but instead of the intermediary brachos, which is 13, those brachos are in a composite. And we say a few words of each of the various brachos, and we end with a bracha, Baruch Atah Hashem Shomei Tefillah. So there are 7 brachos altogether to make it a tefillah kitzara. Says Rabbi Yosi, from that experience with Eliyahu Navi, I learned the following. I learned the following 3 things. I first learned that you're not to enter a churva, a ruin. That you can daven on the derech. And if you do daven on the derech, then you daven a tefillah kitzara, what we call havinenu. And then Eliyahu Navi said to me, Beni, ma kol shomata bechurva zu? What voice did you hear in this ruin? Ve'amarti loi, I said back to him, Shomati bas kol shemenahemes kiyoina ve'oimeres oy lebonim sheba'avonoseihem hechravti es beisi ve'sarafti es heicholi v'igleisim lebein ha'umois. And it said, woe is to the children who because of their sins I removed my Shechina and I destroyed the Beis HaMikdash and I exiled them amongst the nations of the world. V'omar li, and then Navi said back to me, Chayecha v'chai roishcha lo isha zu bilvad oimeres kach. not only at this moment did you hear such a voice, and that voice is only heard once, ela bechol yoim vayoim, at every single day, sholosh pe'omim, oimeres kach, 3 times a day, really 3 times at night, during the Ashmos we mentioned, it is also makes such a voice, velo zu bilvad, and not only does it say that this happens 3 times in the middle of the night, ella b'shah sheYisrael nichnasin lebate knesios ulebate midrashos, the time that Klal Yisrael enters the shuls and the Beis HaMedrash, ve'oinin, and they say Yehei Shmei Godol Mevorach. They praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu's great name, that it should be blessed. HaKadosh Baruch Hu menanei aroishoi, HaKadosh Baruch Hu kaviyachol shakes, he nods his head. Ve'oimer Ashrei HaMelech, fortunate is the king shemekalsino bebeisoi, who praise him in his house. Here it's referring to the Beis HaMikdash Ma'at, the Beis HaKnesses and the Beis HaMedrash. Kach, if this is so, malo la'av shehigla es banov v'oyla lehem lebanim shegolu me'al shulchan avihem. Then in the Beis HaMikdash, how great would there be the praise, and therefore the Av who was Megale brought his children to Golus, and Oyes to the Banim who find themselves exiled from their father's shulchan. Now the Gemara brings a brisa on the last topic, Tanu Rabbanan. Bibnei shloisha dvorim ein nichnasin lechurva. For 3 different reasons, we are told a person should not enter a churva, a ruin. Bibnei chashad, bibnei mapoiles, bibnei mazikin. First is because of a chashad. A chashad means that a person who enters a churva, he would be suspect that he is together with a woman there in the churva. Mapoiles, because of a churva being a ruin, it's a dangerous place and could fall down. And 3, ibnei mazikin, there could be spiritual mazikin, shadim, that are found in such a place of a churva. So now the Gemara wants to then explain why is it necessary that all 3 of these reasons are given for why we should not enter a churva. Mibnei Chashad asked the Gemara, "V'teipuk le mishum mapoiles." Why is that a reason? Mibnei Chashad. Why don't we just say it's good enough because of mapoiles? Practically, the ruin will fall down, and therefore a person should not enter a ruin. Says the Gemara, "Bechaditi." We're talking about a ruin that is, relatively speaking, new, and therefore there's not a concern that it's going to fall down. In fact, the Gemara, "V'teipuk le mishum mazikin." So then, let's just give the reason of mazikin, and that should be sufficient. Betray, we're talking about where there are 2 people, and when there are 2 people, there's no mazikin. Betray, if there's 2 people here, then chashad nami leko, then there shouldn't be a concern of a chashad, because you have one another person. Nobody's going to suspect that there's a woman there too. There's no issue of yichud. Says the Gemara, no. Betray upritzi. We're talking about 2 who are paruts, and because there are paruts, there will still be a chashad that a woman was together there with them. Now the Gemara goes on and asks, Mibnei hamapoiles. Let that be the reason should be sufficient. Because of mapoiles. V'teipuk le mishum chashad umazikin. Why do you have to give the reason now mapoiles? Say that the reason is because of a chashad and mazikin. And you don't have to bring the reason mapoiles. Says the Gemara, betray uksheri. We're talking about 2 people and 2 people who are ksherim. So there's no chashad, and indeed there's no mazikin. B'bnei mazikin, give the reason b'bnei mazikin. Why? Teipuk levi b'nei chashad mapoiles. Just say the reason because chashad mapoiles, without the reason of mazikin. Says the Gemara, bechurva chadati. We're talking about a relatively new churva, ubetray, and 2 people who are ksheri. So we no longer have the chashad that they are together with a woman because two people are ksherim. And we're not choshed two ksherim together with a woman. And secondly, if you have two who are ksherim, so therefore you have no problem. And because it's chadati, therefore you have no problem that it's a mapoiles, that's going to fall down. In fact, the Gemara betray, if you have two, then you no longer have mazikin either. Each betray mazikin nami leko. There shouldn't be a problem of two either. Answers the Gemara b'mekoymon chashinon. In places where there are commonly found mazikin, so then two do not help against the mazikin, and therefore that's still a chashash. V'ibois emo. Alternatively, la'olam bechad uvechurva chadati. We can talk about where there's one person and a new churva, and still there's no chashad. Why? Says the Gemara to explain. Because the koi bedabra, because we're talking about the churva was situated in a sada, in a field, and women are not found in such places. The hasa mishum chashad leko daha isha bedabra lo shchicha. Or mishum mazikin ika, but still, because of mazikin, that would be a reason to then not go into the churva. So it comes out that all three reasons are necessary in order to explain why we shouldn't enter a churva. For number one, because of chashad, that a person should be suspect that he's alone with a woman in the churva. Number two, because of mapoiles, because the churva can fall down. And number three, mazikin, because of the dangers of shadim and other such spiritual mazikin.